their career in the long term, in the long run. Now, I do recommend that if you have anywhere from 1 to 3 years experience, you should stay within about a 2-year resume, or sorry, 2-page resume. However, we can get into some more of the specifics on what to add in those areas. Now, I did bring up an example resume just to show some key points and some key areas that we look for in our searches. And this is something that I'll let you guys know that I'm not a resume writer. This is just a generic resume. Can you guys see that slide?
Yes, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So here's an example. This is what we will get into more of the specifics around it and what we look for in the recruitment space. But there's a few key topics here that I wanted to address. Number one, the first thing that people are doing a little less of is showing their location on their resume. And I do strongly support this. I don't think that people should be disclosing where exactly they're living within the city. Because my experience is, even as recently as a few months ago, that some hiring managers perceive that they need someone that's within a 10 or 15-minute commute within their current geographical area. However, what we know about the market is that we want to be able to cast a wider net of our opportunities than what we're applying for. Work from home is becoming more prevalent. So even though we were working with a customer that said your resume had to be, or sorry, the person had to live within Markham, that company still work from home. So there's no necessary point of limiting your opportunity by disclosing where exactly you live in the city if it's going to lead to you not getting called back for the opportunity. So that's number one. The other area that I want to focus on is just the overall format of your resume and what we need to really include and highlight within it. So obviously, as I mentioned, keeping the geographical territory to being something that is just Toronto is fine. You don't need to get specifics. Obviously, your email and address are also need to be included. And then, of course, I included 2 examples here of your highlights as far as a written paragraph as well as bullet points. Now, there's going to be some conversation and preferences amongst resume writers or HR professionals that are going to say that they prefer a long form so that they can better assess what your communication skills are and your ability to write in full sentences, which is accurate, which I think is very much aligned to the permanent searches and joining an organization on a permanent basis. If you're looking for a technology specific resource that's coming in on a contract or project-based opportunity, we can always feel free to put bullet points of just highlighting what the keys and what the basics are. Of what you've been doing for, what you're looking for, little points about yourself and so on. Another key area that I like to see within resumes when I work with IT people is specifically the areas of expertise. So, or not necessarily levels of expertise, but the areas of technology. So I've seen many different grids, charts laid out as far as operating systems, development languages, years of experience, as well as lists. Either way works. You just want to be able to have a key snapshot of what people are looking for within the job description and for the skill and the function of the opportunity. So this is also an area where you want to be a little broader, right? You want to add some recruiters will call you and say that they'll look for someone that has experience doing development within, let's say, Linux operating system. And it's something that is so basic to so many developers. However, that recruiter might not call you because they don't see the word Linux off a keyword search and how they're searching, right? So the technology snapshot with the areas of expertise, you want to highlight as much technology as possible and get in there. At the same time, you need to be prepared that anything on your resume, you should be able to accurately reflect your experience. So it's a 2-part side where you want to highlight it, and if you're comfortable talking about it and just saying that, yes, I've experience with it, I know what it does, this is the function, this is where I got exposed to it, but by no means putting that you're a certified cloud architect or AWS and a variety of other platforms without the relevant experience and the ability to back it up in an interview. I do not suggest that at all. The other area here is just your education. So just going through, having your education listed. Education can be up top of in this area or at the bottom. That's up to your discretion. And then I always like to follow the company, the years of employment, as well as what the skill set and the job function was for that position. And just keeping that format consistent throughout. The other area, which we see a lot of resumes where we're constantly going back to IT professionals, is asking for the technology environments or the technical environment under each job. You know, someone might say they have Python experience and it captures in a word search up here. I give you a call and then they haven't touched Python since down here, right? So if I can get this right here will get your attention of a recruiter looking for keyword searches or HR professionals. And then right here in the technology environment, year over year, is where they'll be keying in to get you past the first check and then through the second check. Okay? And then obviously references, you do not need to include in the front end either there. So that is so that's as far as the summary of experience troubleshooting. The value and the quantifiable results, that is something that we enlist more to BAs, PMs, people that are on project-based assignments, that they need to be able to highlight a specific duration or a budget or other quantifiable metrics that organizations are looking for that hits the current landscape. It could also tie into IT support positions, looking at KPIs, SLAs, first call volume reactions, and so on. So that's something area there. Now, and obviously the online courses, certificates, and for people that don't have the Canadian or the experience and they're new in their careers, and what we're talking about today is you want to be able to have different sections related to projects, areas of interest, online courses, certifications. If you're doing a webinar on LinkedIn that adds into a security area that levels into another path that you start investigating, feel free to add it as your area of interest on your resume in a different area near at the bottom or near at the top. Just more of capturing as much as possible as we're trying to boost up our resumes. Now, one thing too that I'm going to tell you that, and we'll get into this later when we go into the quantifying. Let me just get back to our, okay. We're back on the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So now we get to tracking and optimizing our job searches, right? So we're starting off at a basic level where we've talked about building our resume and what we're going to do to include that resume. And I do suggest when you're broadening that resume is that you add in as much detail as possible to each job that you've performed, right? Because as we get down to, you know, optimizing your quality job searches, you want to be able to just remove bullet points that aren't going to take it, or that aren't within the job requirements, to make your resume slightly shorter and stand out. So you want to be able to remove things rather than having to add things as you're trying to apply to different job opportunities, right? So if you start off with a resume that has 15 bullet points under what your job was in that position, and then when you look to actually submit your resume, you might just be going to erase certain things or, you know, add different specifics or whatever, but you're just going to work on more editing rather than getting to that stage of reviewing or submitting your resume and having to add all that information from scratch. So it's an area where you're looking at your resume to be able to add as more bullet points as possible, so that adds to a quicker process and response time for when the job opportunity is released that you're looking for. So now we get into the tracking of job orders or job opportunities. And I talk to a lot of people about this when they're starting off their searches, is you want to be able to track your jobs and what you're applying yourself for. And we'll share this with Sadia as well, so that she can share it with you guys. But this is really just a basic snapshot of what you need to be tracking on your job application sections. And we'll get into a little of the details why. But up front initial basis is the job ID, right? Every job position that comes out online through Workday or any other source, 9 out of 10 times when it's direct with the customer, it's going to have a job ID. So track that job ID. Your application date as well, when you apply to the opportunity, the company that you're applying to, the title of the job that you're applying to. Also, the job type, contract, full-time, contract to permanent, right? This is all important. The duration, if it is contract, what's the duration of the contract? Your job source, right? You might want to say, hey, did I get this from Monster, LinkedIn? Is it from a recruiter? Is it from other, right? And this is where we can look at this sheet in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month down the road, and be able to sort of identify, where am I having luck? Where am I having success in this interview process, right? If we expand that conversation to the industry, well, maybe I realize that, government isn't getting back to me because they need government experience or security clearance, but yet I'm having a lot of success in the technology space or financial services, depending what your resume is getting more traction on. And where you're at in the current stage of the opportunities, submitted, interviewing, offer, and so on, right? And within this, you want to be able to create a story of your connection. So when did you apply to the opportunity, who you know within that company, why you like the opportunity. So just in case at a moment's notice, you get that call back from that client or from that individual, and you can revert quickly to your job application tracker and be able to have your comments of what brought you to that job portal in the first place and got you excited about it. I've also added a little thing about login details here. I don't know about you guys, but I have a ton of different email addresses flowing across a ton of different platforms. It's really hard to keep track of. But being able to have your password saved so you're not constantly refreshing it and forgetting it is important as well, just to keep you better organized. Now, one thing I want to kind of go over here is specifically around the job source and coming from a recruiter. So our agencies are, like, for instance, our agency has agreements with Scotiabank, CIBC, Manulife, and a few other companies on a permanent basis so that they can send us a permanent job opportunity and that we can work on it, source our candidates, and submit, and so on. Now, the one area that always frustrates recruiters is that when you contact someone for a job opportunity, that they've already submitted themselves through the portal. That might not mean that you submitted yourself for that specific job opportunity, but just to the company itself. And it slows down the recruiter's ability to get you in front of the hiring manager. So what I mean by that is that you came across a role at Scotiabank 4 months, or let's say 12 months ago. You submitted yourself in the portal, Workday, whatever they use, and then 12 months later, a recruiter calls you about a role permanent with Scotiabank that's perfect for you. And that they're going to take that resume, instead of going through HR channels, directly with the hiring manager, the person that you want to be the person reviewing your resume. However, if the recruiter can't properly articulate what job ID you submitted yourself on, when you submitted yourself to the job opportunity, it's going to really hinder their ability to properly represent you. And unfortunately, a lot of recruitment agencies might move on to the next person rather than really, if you're not able to gather this information at a first glance and to be able to articulate that story of what brought you to that opportunity and why your email is currently flagged within the portal and that they can't submit and represent you for it. So just to follow up just on our slide here, it's important, obviously, not to double submit yourself directly or for a recruiter directly, tracking the success in industries, position, level of experience, contract, permanent. You can start color coding this as far as green, yellow, red, wherever you're finding tracking, having more success. And then it kind of dives into the ensuring, so you've identified the job opportunity, you're looking to kind of push your resume through the final step and get it across. And you want to make sure that you're doing more quality submissions, right? So you're not using that same generic resume that has every word on it, that's got 15 bullet points. What you say to yourself is, I want to submit myself and have everything exactly spoken for because I know this company, I know this opportunity, I have this skill set. So I want to make sure that I submit properly. So right now, we're just going to find that example JD, and we'll walk through this quickly. There it is. Yeah. Here it is. Okay. Sorry. So, if you're looking to submit yourself on a resume, we can go back to that example resume as well to kind of see how it looks and so on of this job opportunity. But really quick, here's an example of a job opportunity that we've supported in the last, let's say, 3 weeks. It's with one of our companies in the financial services sector. It's a 12-month contract for a senior software developer. Now, if I'm looking at this job description, what to include in my resume when I submit it, the most important thing is and this is just the way the recruiter looks at it, right? So the recruiter will look at the bullet points matching up with the duties and responsibilities. So if you're looking to design, create, maintain, troubleshoot, etc., you want to have those adverbs and verbs in that section of your resume, highlighting the experience of what exactly is and where you exactly did it. Now, please do not cut and paste. Please do not add things directly from the job description. That's not going to get you anywhere. But if you can articulate this in another fashion, saying, hey, actually, yes, I have done this, and this bullet point that I already have my resume that I created 2 weeks ago that had 20 bullet points in it, you'll make sure you leave that in there. Other bullet points, you might refrain from, say, that doesn't line up with anything they're looking for in these duties and responsibilities, so I'm going to remove it, right? So you want to be able to sort of have a higher level of quality to your job searching, which is will optimize it and hopefully you get better responses from the market. Now, the areas of knowledge and skills, that's where we go into the technology landscape. And you want to make sure that if you have experience in any of these areas that you're highlighting that as much as possible. So in every single job where you've done ASP.NET, you're going to put in that technology environment in your resume at the bottom there where it says that environment, ASP.NET, and every opportunity all the way through so that they see it's been consistent in your resume. Some people are no longer adding the fact if it's an agile or SDLC environment, right? You want to add that sort of things. It's kind of an oversight as a developer because sometimes people just don't necessarily care too much about it. But you want to be able to highlight where exactly you've done that delivery within those organizations. And just as an extra point here, as far as the nice to have skills, when you're reviewing job descriptions, that's what recruiters care about. And the nice to have skills, the reason why they care about it is because when we're in a war for talent and we're competing against 5 to 10 other agencies, the person that has the nice to haves are likely going to be called back for the interviews first, right? It's just sort of the area that you need to focus on and make sure that you have the nice to haves if they are articulated or outlined. It's an important area to focus on. So any sort of knowledge in Power BI or message-oriented middleware systems would be great for this opportunity as well. So getting back into, so the new changes to the hiring process, right? The new norms. This is something that, you know, I've had a lot of conversations in the industry about and what we're experiencing. So from the new norms that video resumes are acceptable. And I would encourage someone to at least get used to doing it, perhaps have one on file, have one that you think is your best run at it, dress professionally. A few other points in that Karen and I are going to run a blog topic about this next week is the clutter in the background. And right now this would be a bad example of it because there's things in my background right now that you might be looking at and maybe you can't see it because you're looking at the screen that I'm sharing. But little tokens on the mantle and things like that, you don't want to distract the interviewer or the person that's reviewing your video resume, or for that point, if it's an online remote interview, from the things that are around in your background, right? You want to be able to send a clear, concise message that fits your personality, and really sort of you can convey the messaging rather than them looking for clues in the background about what they're looking at. So it's important to sort of first off have a video resume ready to go. And when you're looking at your video resume, you can edit it, you can move it, you can change it. You obviously want to customize it, but I do suggest you get used to talking about it. And it'll also set you up for how you look and how you perceive and how you sort of communicate and your nonverbal cues or your hand gestures and how you use your hands, and just all get used to how other people are looking at it. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, evaluating it, right? So we want to make sure that we take care of all the other things around us and we control what we can, which is practice, have a couple runs at it, worry about your background. Your lighting too is also critical here. What I mean by that is you don't want to have anything of light in the background because it kind of creates sort of like a halo around you at times, or more of an outline of image. And where you really want to focus your lighting is at the front of the camera, or really in front of your computer, focus on your face, so that people can pick up on those nonverbal cues. They can pick up on, you know, your hand gestures, or maybe you're prepared to interject with a point that they're asking you, right? So it's just very important to sort of at least having the practice of doing these which I can tell Saudi has been working with you guys a lot on, as she's nodding, saying, yeah, I told you guys, this is what the trend is becoming. So the other area here, and we'll just kind of quickly go through this in the next 2 slides. And what I want to do here, because I just want to make sure we can answer the questions, is I want to kind of show you guys what's behind the scenes for recruitment agencies, and dive into what our ATS looks like, which is Bullhorn, how we engage with Bullhorn, how your candidate profile is set up in recruiter systems, how past conversations are documented, and obviously, and a few other points here on, leveraging your LinkedIn and networking. So, one area quickly on LinkedIn is I do suggest that you get active on there and you add your likes to the areas of interest in the articles that you're looking at. Because one area that I look at is actually the amount of activity that an individual has and what they're following. Because if they're following a lot of stuff in an industry that my client's looking for, then I know this person's engaged and this is an absolute perfect opportunity for them. And it's well aligned to what their career goals are. Obviously, you want to showcase that comes through your passion, through projects and other work you've done in your portfolio. So you want to be able to highlight that in your LinkedIn profile as well. And then please, obviously, there's a lot of bad things going on in the environment or in the political landscape these days, and a lot of, different opinions out there about a lot of different things. Masks, no masks. We're not here to discuss that, and I'm not a doctor or scientist, so I would just say just try to think about refraining from anything that's controversial. That's just kind of a basic guideline you want to be aware of. And then the other area is if you're reaching out to hiring managers, and we can go in further on this, it's just before I get into this next slide, is that's what pertaining to if you're seeing a job on LinkedIn that is lined up with a recruiter or an HR person or someone has their point of contact as that representative, you are able to message them and let them know, like, hey, I'm very interested enough to take this risk of messaging you directly, and I appreciate your response. Or you don't, but like, I would just say, like, do not expect a response, right? So it's one thing to message people, and I say be genuine, be personable, be straightforward if it's coming from someone that's connected to the job posting, but I wouldn't necessarily message them more than once, right? The once acknowledgement is when they're receiving 40 to 60 applicants for a role that only 5 people are really qualified for. And you want to, if you're one of those 5 people, then absolutely that communication is going to bring you from the baseline to the top line. But at the same time, maybe that person, has other 5 profiles that they're currently looking or going through. And you don't want to have another opportunity that comes out at a different level or different team or whatever it is. And that person, you apply to the next job, and that person saying, no, this person sent me 4 messages. I didn't think they were qualified for it. I don't want to deal with that person, right? So it's just more of how it's perceived. And I get a lot of messages myself. I try to get back to as much as possible, but I just want to let you know what the expectation are for the amount of emails that come into people that are hiring. That it's great to see, shows a lot of initiative, but just more of keeping it at an initial glance. And then obviously, if you know anyone within a hiring manager or within that company you're looking for, definitely reach out to them with the same expectation of, if you can help me align the person that's hiring and vouch for me, please do so. But otherwise, kind of just more of just keep it more of one message or so. I'm just trying to get to my web page here, or my browser. Okay. So we're going to quickly look at this. So I'm going to walk you through our Bullhorn. So please don't, and I hope no one takes screenshots here or anything. I think this information, I was running it by my legal officer, and the dates are pretty old here and the information, so it shouldn't be too worrisome. However, I'll just let you guys know. So this is how Bullhorn's structured, right? And this is what recruiters live off of. And what you have here is, I go to candidates, and as every candidate we have in our system, and right now we have over 380,000 candidates in our system. Right? Or actually, sorry. Oh, sorry. We actually have over 180,000, but I've already searched .NET developer in here, and there's 38,000 .NET developers. Those are the people that have the word .NET developer in their resume. So that's not necessarily .NET developers. That's not, but they have .NET and or developer in their resume, and there's 38,000 people like that. So, what a recruiter does on a search like this, and how it eases or allows them to go through their job, is they can click this little widget here, which opens up the candidate's profile as far as their resume, notes that they've had in the past. So this person was mass mailed back in 2014, probably didn't get a response, wasn't a direct call out, maybe called them, left a voicemail, maybe they didn't document it, right? So there's other examples here we can look at that might have a little more history without me. So yeah, example here of just someone reaching out and speaking to that person and so on. But I'll go back to Maxime because I've already ran through him on this one. And when we look at Maxime, his candidate profile shows up and we have his resume, which we've all already kind of looked at once. The past conversation notes, his details and experiences. So if we have conversations with our candidates, we're going to put the hourly rates they're looking for. We're going to put what their salary expectations are. So it gives you some insight in saying, do not misrepresent or do not try certain things. One day, $35 an hour, the next day, $55 an hour. Recruiters are kind of intuitive with this, and they'll play dumb. But really, there's a lot of information that's captured over the years. And a lot of times when it comes down to it, we question and say, hey, how come 3 months ago you only wanted this much money, and now 3 months later you want this much? It just leads to an awkward conversation. And let it go. You want to be able to build trust, right? And that is a two-way street, so you want to be able to involve them. So going back in the whole solution of how a recruiter is looking at a job description is that it's all built in to have Google searches and LinkedIn in the recruiter's ATS. So I don't know Maxime, but right now I can get an update on Maxime of where he's located currently in the city or what company he's working for. And I can add him, engage with him, send him a note on LinkedIn, follow up with an email that I have in the ATS, maybe drop him a phone call. And what we call in the industry 5 touches, right? We want 5 different ways to how we can connect with the candidate that looks good for the opportunity that we're working on. So, and going back to the area I mentioned, if I'm talking to Maxime for the first time, I might look at his activity. And this goes for everyone's profile, is that all your activity in the posts that you look at, all the likes that you've shared and the things like that, it's all documented like anything else in the tech industry. So if I'm talking to, Maxime and I want to hit it off and do well, I might bring up Simon here as a talking point. I might bring up Gary Vee. I'm a Gary Vee fan, right? So, there's certain things that this is what kind of goes on in recruiters' world as far as what they look at, how it draws into their ATS bullhorn, and kind of how we get to the actual point of reaching out to the candidate community and going from there. All right, so that was a lot in a little. I hope it's okay for everyone. I know it was really busy there. Sorry, Sadia. Are there any questions?
Good info, John. Okay, so let's see here. So feel free, everyone, to write any questions that you have in the chat box. I think we have one from Mohammed. He was asking if is it a good practice to put a period after bullet points in your resume?
I will say that for me, I'm really indifferent. And this is where I think the industry's gone in the last 10 years. Is when I first got in the industry, it was always cover letter and perfect punctuation, grammar, periods, commas, and so on. I think there's been a lot of flexibility in the tech space because of what you guys bring to the table is so unique, that I like to say that, yes, I mean, if you're going to be a stickler for it, I think it's important to have periods in there. But however, I've never been in a decision-making matter with a hiring manager where the person said, we can't go with this person because of that.
Great. Okay, good. What about tables? Do tables affect the applicant tracking system?
So you'll hear this a lot from recruiters saying that, hey, can you send me a formatted resume? Because a lot of times when we drive into Bullhorn and we come out of Bullhorn and back and forth, we lose some of the capabilities of the tables and so on. So I would definitely say that if it makes it easier to eliminate the table and just have a list, but at the same time, if tables, it speaks to who you are and your design and what you want to put forward and what you want to put out there from a marketing perspective. Go for it. However, you might get some feedback in saying that, especially if it's PDF and conversions to Word are always difficult as well. And we're in some tight timeframes at times.
That's another good question, John. Word or PDF? Which do you prefer to see? What's easier for you as a recruiter?
Well, directly to hiring managers, PDF. If you're signing directly with an organization, go with your PDF. If you're working with a recruiter, go with the Word, because the Word, they can add their own logo, their own information, and so on. So,
Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now also, I was going to mention that we're going to share that job tracking form just as a template to go off of. It's up to everyone if they want to use it or not. If you have any direct or any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll make sure I add everyone on LinkedIn. I guess we got another question here. It's good practice to put project details under the work history. Yes. So I would say that you want to put your project details under your work history, and especially in that master copy of your resume. And then if it's pertaining to what the job description is, absolutely include it. It's definitely of value. And also if a lot of the technologies you're mentioning throughout your resume that give you extra qualifications are listed in that project space, then you want to at least dive in 2 or 3 bullet points out of that project, to make sure you include it in there.
Good.
Video resume. Okay. So we're going to do the video resume blog next week. I'm actually heading back to the office for the first time in 6 months, so we can get a professional background and talk around some of the stuff that I mentioned as far as all these doodads that my wife likes to put up in the background that lead to talking points that I say do not do, because someone might ask, what's that snow globe in the background or whatever. But as far as just initial guidelines, a video resume is making sure I do like to do this and using hand gestures and making myself, because I do this when I talk also when I'm standing up. So as far as basic guidelines are, I like to keep it below 2 minutes, right? I think 1:30 is probably your best point. You want to start off with an introduction of who you are, what you're looking for, what your qualification skills are. You want to highlight your education. It really is just maybe even a minute of you explaining what brings you to the opportunities or what brings you to the market right now, and maybe adding one unique thing about yourself as more of a character trait. But again, tread lightly on that, and also stay away from, if I could be honest, stay away from sports, right? I don't know how many resumes I have that say I'm a soccer fan, I'm a hockey fan. I think it kind of goes for a lot of people. It's not necessarily a distinguishing factor. However, if you coach youth sports, if you volunteer within a charity, those are more points that I'd bring up.
Good. Well, John, point to the video resumes. That's one thing that we implemented for this cohort. Okay. So everybody in the cohort had to create one. Some of them looked really good. Would you recommend putting that on LinkedIn as maybe a feature? What do you think?
So the thing here is, and I've been working on this too, right? And talking to people in the community. And I think it's important to have one, because if you have one and you practice with it, you're ready to go when it's requested to produce it, right? Rather than, oh my gosh, I have 24 hours to hand in a homework assignment and I haven't started yet, and it takes you back to high school, right? So, I don't necessarily think you need to outwardly have one out there constantly. Does that make sense? I know we're kind of treading here. I think you should have one prepared, similar to a cover letter. Have one prepared, but unless it's really requested upon, you want to make sure you're prepared to compete against the competition, but not necessarily do more work than the competition if it's not requested upon.
Okay, good. So just have it in your toolbox. Good.
Yeah, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, somebody, I think Mohammed asked if cover letters, do HR read cover letters? Is it?
I will say that I personally do not. I did early on in my career. I read a lot of them. I think I started receiving less and less of them. I do read them when I work on some permanent opportunities, especially if it's going to be requested by HR that I submit across, because I want to make sure that it makes sense to me and that it's proper, rather than because my reputation's on it when I send it across. And I think organizations, it's important to have one, because organizations do ask for it. And if you, especially if it's on an Indeed and they're asking for your cover letter or your CV, I'd submit a cover letter. Just kind of, again, ticking that in case there's that person in the back behind the screen who's 30 years in the industry, in an HR role, and they really want to be that stickler. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then Amal asks about modern style resume. So I think resumes with graphics and like infographics. Are you?
Yeah, and they're great, and I get a lot of them. So I get a lot of them for developers, a lot of them for UX UI people for obvious reasons. I think it has to be sharp. Obviously, you want to have your accreditations in there, your certifications, and those emblems. Those are absolutely sort of eye-catching. I've seen some really bad ones that have like a really grainy small image of a Rogers logo. That I'd stay away from. I think if you're going to any sort of digital organization or digital technology for a company, if you have those digital resumes that have that, what do you call it, your skill, like PHP, Python, Ruby, whatever, and it's the 3 stars, 4 stars, or whatever it is. I definitely think that there's value in it. It just needs to hit with the right demographic. I wouldn't submit that to TD Bank unless it was specifically TD Digital or Scotiabank Digital Factory. But that's kind of my main recommendation there. And also for recruiters is that it's hard to play with. If we need to add logos, if it's a PDF like that, it's probably the worst thing we do is resume editing on a daily basis. It's the least fun thing recruiters have to do, if I could be honest.
Very good. Okay, so it's 4:45. Wow, we're on the dot. Irene, you had a last question? Oh, Irene saying a big thank you. Very insightful information. Rena is going to close us out.